Please, I know the potential of humanity. So when you're talking about the effects of some of these things, sometimes, you know, these superpowers must learn to accommodate and to live and to accept patriotic leadership, patriotic citizens. Too often, they're happier with people who are not patriots. But you in Europe, excuse me, don't get angry, you never seem to know the role that some of your bad businessmen, you have good businessmen, and I respect them, but some of your bad businessmen are always doing bad things on our continent. And it's our people who suffer. Has been committing the most atrocious crimes. I'm not saying this because I'm in a position. I would have wished they had continued from where we left off. I would have saluted them and praised them. My country would be flying. But my country is involved in the most massive corruption, some of the brutal killings that have taken place, terrorizing, recruiting people from their parties into the police, the military, etc. And yet, BBC, CNN, Sky, American, media, the print media are all quiet because they want to portray the image of that fine Ghana as a showcase for the rest of Africa, so that they can use Ghana, who has done so well from my time into this time, and they're keeping quiet about this atrocious, the image of this government, because they do not want to undermine. They have enough problem in Afghanistan, they have enough problem in whatever it is, so they do not want to lose the situation in Africa in terms of the New World Order. The unfortunate thing is that I don't care who you, in Italy, in France, in Britain, America bring into power in my country. But I would wish you would contain them enough from declining into massive corruption and brutality and tyrannical tendencies. Because if you do not contain them, what happens is that they become so corrupt, they are now afraid of free and fair elections, and they refuse to leave power, and then we have volcanic eruptions. There was a time when we saw the white man, our colonial powers, as our enemies. But I think, no, not that I think, something that is worse than an enemy is a traitor. Yes. And when we won our freedom, some of our countries were led by some of the most noble nationalists, of our time. But at the same time, with the passage of time, some of them became treacherous and rather betrayed our aspirations. In effect, what I'm trying to say is that as bad as an enemy can be, I think something worse than an enemy is a traitor. We've ended up evolving in the process of trying to modernize. We've ended up being westernized to the point where, as I sit here before you, when I wanted to even name my children African names, heroic names, I'm a Catholic. The Catholic Church, or that character, back at home, said, no, I cannot. They'll have to be Catholic names. I mean, those Catholic names are European names. I went through an argument with this priest, and I said, listen, I have a right to my identity. Don't take away my identity. Okay? I mean, Christianize me if you may, but don't westernize me. There were times my wife and I is a great graphic artist. We made some beautiful Christmas cards that depicted Christmas in an African setting. And the Christmas cards sold so well, even with Catholic nuns, white Catholic nuns. We wanted to secure the patent. I went to an office, the Registrar General's office, to secure the patent. Can you believe that this fellow African, registrar.
Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, circumstances in the peninsula between the communist north and the capitalist south no doubt contributed to the birth of Reverend Moon. A man with a passion for peace, he did not only restrict himself to the search for peace in the peninsula, but went beyond to the rest of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, peace and security are very essential to development anywhere. But can we have peace when there is no justice? Any specter of injustice that goes uncorrected, unrectified, will perpetuate itself, and the perpetuation of injustice can lead to the destruction of the moral fabric of a society. Globalization is reshaping the world in interesting ways. As wealth becomes a reality in some parts, some areas still have to live with a mirage while the rest suffer their nightmares. The collapse of the bipolar world has brought in its wake a tide that is served by the powerful few, whilst tossing and turning, crushing and drowning a few too many. The developed countries may suffer a few pangs and stresses here and there, but they have not lost their ability and capacity to adjust and to correct themselves. If America's quality of justice, for instance, was not improving with the passage of time, a black African would not have emerged as president in the United States. And also his emergence as a corrective expression to the excesses that preceded his arrival on the scene. In other words, Obama's emergence was America's quest to restore some political morality back into their political leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, in the developed world, the public's capacity to express moral outrage, to defy wrong, to express judicial consciousness, both during elections and in the lifetime of a government, is what sustains the peace and stability of those countries. Let us not, at the same time, be unmindful of the fact that the yardstick for judging what is considered right or wrong is not the same measure that is applied in their relationship with those of us in the developing world. Ladies and gentlemen, what about the quality of justice in parts of Africa and the Middle East? Had freedom and justice been at the root, or had been part and parcel of Egypt and Tunisia's development, would those countries have rebelled? I don't think so. Development was done at the expense of freedom and justice, by and large. Ladies and gentlemen, Gaddafi had provided so much for his people, but even the Bible says, man shall not live by bread alone. The quest and thirst for political expression is why God gave us free will. It is unethical to suppress it. Leadership must bring the best out of our people so that that creative energy can be nurtured for development purposes. The late Pope John Paul, who helped to bring down communism and socialist governments, subsequently described the private sector as the savagery of capitalism. Because with the collapse of communism, the world expected to see the human face of capitalism. Instead, we are seeing the savagery, as the Pope put it. Governments and their respective agencies in your countries, in developed countries, however, are able to bring to book the excesses by the private sector, the corrupt tendencies by some of the members, some of them in the private sector, especially the foreign ones, ladies and gentlemen, are really causing havoc in Africa, and they're doing so with impunity. The quality of socioeconomic justice on the continent is low enough as it is. Taking further advantage of our vulnerability will be undermining the fragile peace and stability amongst our people. Ladies and gentlemen, lastly, ordinary people at the grassroots normally do not harbor ethnic or religious